Apologies. Any declarations of interest? No. The minutes of the previous meetings, can I ask that they be agreed? Thank you. Agenda item 4. We're going to have agenda item 6, which was on your papers. We're going to have that first, if that's okay with everybody. So can I ask Leah to?
Thank you. The purpose of this report is to feedback the outcome of the recent task and finish group convened for staff sickness absence. At the last Scrutiny Committee meeting in January, members will recall a presentation provided to staff on staff sickness absence, which was presented by officers. The task and finish group held 2 meetings which largely focused on the reason for long-term sickness and the health and well-being of staff. The report identified that there was a high proportion of musculoskeletal absences that related to long-term sickness. Members have queried the reasons for this, and officers advised that this was in part due to increased waiting times within the NHS, which was obviously beyond the control of the authority. It was also identified that the authority's ongoing support to staff includes referrals, particularly early referrals for diagnostics, which can include scans and seeking appointments with consultants. This is paid for by the authority, and the benefit allowed for early diagnosis to ensure treatment was received earlier. However, we have seen the benefit of this has been impacted due to the waiting time, as even with the early diagnosis, staff are still waiting for a significant period of time to receive their treatment. It's also identified within the report the potential costs of long-term sickness and how they are detailed. I've included the last 2 years to give members an idea of what they are. However, at the task and finish group, members were also assured in terms of how the authority budget for potential absences from work. It was also stressed about the importance of working on a national level, of collaborating to see if we can identify trends, in particular in regard to musculoskeletal, any injuries or issues, to see what is the impact of staff over the period of their engagement as firefighters. The other area we focused on was health and well-being, which is detailed from paragraphs 14 onwards. Members were advised of the different types of areas in which the authority promote health and well-being. For example, the annual health awareness programme, which focuses on various different areas of health and support we can offer staff. The internal communications such as hot news, and the health and well-being network, which also drives different ways of encouragement in terms of our walking and particularly cycling, which was obviously raised. It was also noted in the report in terms of members wanted to understand what's the impact then on hybrid working and that of sickness. And we did advise the group, which we'll have today, some of the impact of hybrid working and what is the work-life balance for staff. It was concluded on page 20, paragraph 17 and 18, that it is commended on the staff's health and wellbeing programme and how it supports staff. And obviously it's the encouragement of the collaboration both nationally and regionally in order to identify these trends, which is something that potentially can be picked up on more of a national level. So if I can just take you to the recommendations on page 17, it is recommended that we note that the conclusion of the task and finish group is the review of staff sickness absence, and note the recommendations to promote the health benefits of walking, cycling, and expanding the health promotions to also include diabetes, which I know has already been scheduled for this upcoming August. Note the recommendation to collaborate nationally on any trends or best practice in managing staff sickness absence. Recommendation for officers to continue to review the mental health and wellbeing support provided to staff, and instruct myself to include the outcomes of any scrutiny and review that will go back to the full authority, which I'm proposing to do on the 16th of May. It may also be something if members want to consider a further recommendation in regards to the collaboration nationally to feedback to the Scrutiny Committee. We have an annual report that goes in September, which is always identified the health and safety aspects of RTCs and injuries. We've already said that would also include the sickness absence, and with that, the collaboration nationally may help members identify if there is a trend. And this would obviously also include the musculoskeletal injuries and whether members want to pursue that any further once we actually have that data. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, before we do we approve the recommendations or not, are there any questions? Yes, Dave?
Firstly, can I thank all the officers who took part in this scrutiny because of the information that was provided. It was very informative for us and able for us to discuss it and break down some of the areas and questions, some of the reasons of why some of the sick and absence levels are so high. So in particular, we found that there was the cases regarding people, staff who had mental health issues, and the other areas that multiple. So it was those two areas, the main issues that we need to address within the service, and has grown sort of quite high over the last 2 to 3 years. So there's been some issues there that we need to address, and the recommendations that we review that, and I'll see about this because it's probably difficult with mental health because it comes in different ways, different forms, different strands. So it's actually drilled down to find out what exactly impact mental health impact that it has on our staff. So people there from, small amounts of issues with mental health to major issues with mental health. So I think we need to sort of draw down to know exactly what where the main points are, why staff need to go search for mental health issues. But here's a bit of work to be done there. I'm confident of Nathan and others have said about the work that's already been undertaken. We're quite confident that we address all the time. And the other issues that the most possible to this is another issue. It's difficult to sort of identify in sense because it's your body where in terms of people you joints, your bones, muscle tissue, and things like that. That has an impact obviously on the physical ability of people to do work. And one of them which we sort of questioned was how can we break that down in the age barrier, in the age band, because for instance, firefighters are now got away with sort of defense age is now 60. That impacts on anybody over 50, like between 50 and 60. I think we need to have a look at that because with the government changing the age retirement, age to 60 now, we need to look at that. It's not just affecting us locally, it's a national issue. But we need to try and get the data right across the fire service. It's probably not what those do it. It's probably what the LGS and how that the fire commissioners and all like that. We should be doing this everywhere to collate all that information nationally and to find out how it's impacting staff over the age of 50. Because if the government are asking firefighters to work until the age of 60, and we've got the evidence there to prove that not this to do, I think it's something that needs to be reviewed. So it may take some time to collect all that information and to sort of digest it and draw out what we can from it to see where we go forward on this. But I think we need to start the work now and we need to raise the issue now to make sure that we can get us to have to build that evidence and any future governments. Obviously, we have an but there may be a change of attitude, a change of approach, and maybe it's for them then. Once we get it all set, to say there's some issues there about firefighter ability, physical ability, and mental ability to actually carry out the work. Is what we should be able to intend to. So I think with this recommendation that if we include the multiple disclosures and we'll write to the LDA to raise our concerns, I think, on this point, so that the fire commission can then, we should be pressed down to do the data, I think, because it's an individual authority asking other authorities to give us their information. I think you might be a bit reluctant to do that, and they might say, we can't because of data protection or whatever. But if it's done by we need to get this information, share this information, and then it should be to them and to collate it, and then we can take it from there. I mean, it should be dealt with on a national level. But obviously, some of that information should also come back to us at some point to say that this is from our perspective, this is what's impacting our homes, and this is how we need to address it. And from the government now, but obviously the future government, whenever the outcome of the election is known, because as we go forward, because I think it's a major issue now that we've probably picked up on, but others may not. So it's something that we need to, so if we can change the recommendation slightly, Chair, just to include that most of the opposite town and the information on and also that we refer to the right to the LDA, asking them about collecting the data nationally, and also with that data should highlight back page, so that they identify if they're there, and then they act on the counter. That's okay.
Yeah, but, I mean, that's fine with me. I mean, it seems highly sensible to me. Certainly, the two extra meetings that we had in the working group, certain things were highlighted to us. And I'm certainly quite happy for that. Is everybody else in the committee?
Yeah, I'm quite happy to support that recommendation that Dave just suggested. It's also as well for us as the authority as we stand now to have that responsibility really to make sure if possible we give them the best retirement that they can possibly have. That can go, so it's looking further than obviously the 50 to 60, but what have we as an authority done basically to make sure that their retirement is in health issues particularly is as best as we could do as an authority. So, we have a responsibility to do that, and unless we have the details of how perhaps other authorities are dealing with this, we're not going to get very far. It's what you recommend. Yeah.
Yes, I totally agree. I mean, I'm sure that a lot of our firefighters do want to work longer than 50 to 60 and they're not able. I'm sure that we have first aid training that firefighters can do in other parts of the authority, admin, for example, and other things. Perhaps you might want to highlight that just before you come.
Yeah, I suppose, look, I think the question is a good one, and certainly nationally, in terms of just reassurance locally for members. Mersey Fire invest heavily. I'm sure that was something we piece out from the already held in the Scrutiny group. But there's an hour a day of every shift given over to training to prevent injuries so that we maintain a fit and well workforce. That's without having the data for the services, that's probably accessible of what other services do in terms of that. And obviously you've had the input on the mental health side of things, but from a musculoskeletal point of view, yes, as we get older, we all know, including myself, that we may start to become more upset just because of our lifestyle and so on. But we really address that in the service by putting that time in. We've invested, the authorities invested heavily in the gyms. There's one just a few hundred yards from where we're sitting now. So we're not passive in that for our firefighters. We're caring, the authorities caring, that choice to invest in that time and the equipment and the facilities to make sure we have great occupational health team. I think that's all, but I think the question is good still to ask, because you're quite right, and obviously I chair the Health and Safety Committee as well, and obviously the injuries to manual handling, which are often musculoskeletal, so we've done an awful lot of work around manual handling, making sure that we trend analysis on everything that happens, every injury is scrutinised to the point at which we see if there's a trend and if there's anything that we can change to do, and that comes as we said in the annual report back to the authority. So it's a good question, I think, absolutely, one that's well worth asking and keeping us alive to that, but the reassurance I'd like to give is that we're not passive in that, we're actually seeing that firefighters are able to work longer, so we've put some real steps to maintain our welfare and our health and our fitness to enable us to reach that retirement age, as Councillor Rennie says, and then enjoy a healthy, happy retirement. Absolutely, that's what this authority and service is about. So hopefully that's a bit of reassurance for you. But that's not to say that that's all the questions to ask. I think it's from a scrutiny point of view, it's the level.
Yeah, so it's Councillor Wood, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
if I wanted to come in on the muscular a little bit, and given recent injuries, is that from my learning, and is that the only way to sort of, well, a good way to prevent breakages, once you get to in sort of 50s plus, is building mass and putting it on in your 20s, and it's only in your 20s that you can do it. So it's kind of that aspect, because osteoporosis, which will affect men and women, okay, it affects women more, but you can try and negate some of that impact, but it has to be done within that 20s bracket. And the more you do then, you say, obviously, the preventative aspect in terms of using the gym, mass, you know, all of that. So it was just to see sort of whether or not there was any, because it looks at lifestyle, looks at like that health, mental health, diabetes, obviously related to lifestyle, but additionally so, breakages when you're older, that is related to lifestyle and what you can do at an earlier age to prevent.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things just on that. So one, in terms of our standard for the service, in terms of the whole, good practice, which both in terms of fitness levels for firefighters and 42 being 2 max and so on, to look over the life of firefighters' career, then that's why the bar is set quite high, the fitness standards for the fire service, for exactly as you're describing there, because over the career, we anticipate that then, you know, if you can achieve that when you enter the service, then that is a good start point, as you've said, to make sure that we can maintain that fitness throughout the rest of someone's career. And that hours, gym time and PT time and the provision of strength training, because I absolutely agree that strength training as well as cardio, and it's a balance for firefighting role. It's not all about cardio and it's not all about strength, it's a little mix. So the equipment that we provide is all geared through our occupational health team, and our people team extra in the room. It's all, you know, we have obviously our PTIs and so that's all designed to be functionally fit for the role. Which is a combination of strength and cardio. So that is lots of those hours, those hours training, and just for people who, as they're getting into the latter stage of the career, it's from the moment you start to the moment you finish, it's encouraged, you know, and actually in the work routine for operational firefighters, the gluten assault to make sure they maintain that fitness. We have an annual fitness test every year, so hopefully there's some reassurance.
Absolutely, it's kind of a start, sorry through you, Chair, it's kind of starts with how it can impact without you having known that there could be an aspect of preventative measures done within the age 20s, and that this is dealing with, you know, firefighters in themselves, but across the organisation for all employees, whether, you know, they're office space or whether they're out there fighting fires, is that I think it's probably an important aspect of all doing too.
Yeah, I would be. I think we're sure that is considered in the
Thank you.
yeah.
So
No.
you've heard of it.
They said something about taking it down to the LGA for the fire commission to have a look at. How did we know if they picked that as one of the scrutiny items?
Well, I'm sure we will get reply if we're going to
Because we tried to do the same with the sprinkler system, but it didn't.
Are you saying we never received a reply?
We tried to get it so it was the same as Wales and Scotland, that every new build had to have a sprinkler system, but the LGA chose not to do that scrutiny work.
I
I
suppose
mean, I really agree with you.
Was this in your time, Dave, when you were the chair, or something?
yeah, because it's, there was a lot of politics, unfortunately, in the end, because we were asking to change the government policy. Obviously, there was a pushback from certain elements to conservative, but we did get some wins out in the sense that we designed a toolkit which was rolled out voluntarily within the national basis through the National Planning Association. So that was good, because hopefully then that was sort of being sent out there and supported by the respective local authorities across the country to get the local authorities to adopt this approach with their in hospital and we're working with ourselves, especially that's within. But just on the point itself about directly picking it up, when we do send the letter to explain the situation here and what we're asking, to copy in our representatives, the chair and the vice chairs, just so they're aware of it, so that when the next LGA Fire Commission is held, that they can raise it and ask them to raise it.
Thanks, Chair. I'm really happy with the attitude that there is of looking at the health of firefighters. And I pick the example where the big discussions about contamination and contaminants. I did a visit to Old Swan Fire Station recently, and I was really impressed at the way it's got right down to the working level, and to the extent that students from the firefighters were making comments, and it was informed. There's the academic research that's going on into this, there's the physical aspects in terms of what happens to contaminated work gear, and even down to things like that's not just taken off, that's taken off outside to avoid cross-contamination. One of the firefighters was saying how they've got to be careful because the residue that sorted everything from fires gets onto their neckline because that's where all the seals cross over. And I was very impressed that it's being taken so seriously, and hopefully that will benefit the health of firefighters, because firefighters' health, I didn't know until they explained to me that they have more ill health younger than the average, and this is why the contamination that they get from fire debris and all the smoke and everything else is a factor in this. So this is an attempt to avoid that and to ensure the health lasts better into their retirement. So I was really impressed with the whole thing knitted together and being taken so seriously. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, any other questions or debates? Okay, so we're going to agree the recommendations with the two extra, the one that Ria highlighted before and Dave's extra recommendation as well. Is that agreed? Agreed. Okay, thank you. Moving on to agenda item 5, which is item 4 on the main pages, which is the staff survey. I'm going to have a presentation. Is it right there?
It's that, I think, when we like that.
Devon Michelle. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I've met a couple, but just to introduce myself, I'm Michelle Kerr. I work in strategy and performance with my director, Deb Appleton, as a community engagement advisor. I have been involved in a staff survey, the last staff survey that we did, and we will certainly be involved in the forthcoming one this year. So today I'm just going to provide you with a little bit of an overview, a little bit of a recap of the staff survey that we last conducted, which was back in 2022. Okay, so we've actually been conducting staff engagement surveys since 2014. The survey is run every 2 years. Even when we've had incidents such as COVID and things like that, we've also ensured that we've conducted the survey. Every 2 years, it uses the previous surveys that we have done as a benchmark. So we can look at similar questions and see whether we are actually making any improvements or we need to make any further improvements. The 5th staff engagement survey took place from the 14th of November to the 21st of December 2022. As I mentioned before, we can benchmark our staff survey progress against the results of previous. So we do look from 2014, 16, 18 and 2020. People in site, they are the people that actually conduct the survey on our behalf. And they can also benchmark the fire and rescue service against other clients, including fire and rescue services, such as Derbyshire, Wiltshire, Cambridgeshire, Cheshire, Shropshire, and other big organisations such as the TSB, the police, numerous universities, and I think it's just growing the list of people who they're engaging with. So I'm just going to provide a little bit of a recap and summary of the findings of the 2022 survey. Okay, so a real positive for us. Although there was a drop in the engagement level by 2%, it's something that we should really be proud of. It was considered by Insight as outstanding work when they compared us against other fire and rescue services. And obviously as well, at the time in 2022, there was quite a few things going on in the world that would have impacted on our staff. And I'll talk a little bit about them as we move on. Our response rate for 2022 was 32%. And that was a little bit of a drop there. And please, 2024 should read 2014, a bit of a typo, or we could say that we hope that we get 68% again in 2024. Okay. Our engagement score, again, you've all got it in your pack, just in case that is a little bit too hard to read on the board. So when you look at it, we are still in the green. We're still doing really well with our engagement. As I say, that there has been a few ups and downs, but we're really proud to have engaged and got that level on our score. Then also what we do, so basically when the survey is completed and we get all the information back from people Insight, and they also come and deliver a presentation to us. It's our job then to start digging into the presentation, looking at areas, looking at top and bottom scores, analysing the data that we've received, and that's just a little bit of a snippet of what our highest scoring questions were and mirrored against what our lowest scoring questions. So again, you can have a look there in your pack against the benchmark. So that's for everybody that people Insight work with around fire and rescue services, and then our score compared to 2020. Okay, we also then have a couple of free box questions where we can ask members of staff who complete the survey what changes have been made that have actually impacted you in a positive manner. So we've had lots of that leadership message, clear, open communications from the leadership team, culture of openness, flexibility, promotion of good, competent officers into senior positions. So that's a way of giving that free text question to get a little bit more of an understanding from our staff. Again, qualitative feedback, that's another area. We do try to keep the questions similar so that we can benchmark, but we can add a couple of new ones in if we wish. This again is a free text question where we ask people to give us some indication of one thing that maybe we're not as good at and one thing that members of staff would like to see us change. And you know, that goes from career and development, working patterns, reward recognition, collaboration, organisational change. You'll see in your pack, we touch across quite a large amount of feedback that we get from the staff. So bearing that in mind, if we look then at the headline messages, so this is where we've looked at all the information in the survey, analysed it and come up with a few things. So these were our headline messages. Strong employee engagement score, so we should be proud of that. Top quartile position retained, so we never scored less than anybody else within the quartile. All themes scoring higher than fire and rescue external benchmark. So although our scores dropped a little bit, we're still the highest when we look at all the other fire and rescue services. There is good confidence in the future of the fire authority. Staff feel recognised and valued and feel they've had a useful appraisal. Strong alignment to values and good communication channels. So bearing that in mind, they're the headline messages. We also then need to look at what the areas of focus. So where didn't we reach that point that we really wanted? Where have we dropped a little bit in our scores? These were the area of focus. Obviously the response rate amongst operational staff, but as I mentioned before, it's worth bearing in mind the survey was conducted during a national dispute. The drop in work-life balance question, positive responses. Explore opportunities to better collaborate between departments. Hotspots by demographics, again, the question, did the impact of the national dispute that we were going through actually have an impact on how our staff responded? And also bear in mind there was a bit of a cost of living crisis as well, so that could have just had a little bit of an impact on how staff felt at that time. And also consideration of how change is actually managed. Okay. When we spoke there a little bit about the demographics, hotspots by demographics, what People Insight do as well, they also break it down to demographics of gender, ethnicity groups and length of service from operational staff. So that's where we're thinking, has the national dispute actually had any effect on the way staff have answered survey questions? Next steps. So basically then what we need to do, we've got all this information, we've got all the analysis, what do we need to do? How can we develop an action plan? So we sit down, we have a look, understand the themes in the survey results. So it's really important that we have an understanding of all the themes, share the results with leaders and managers, and I'll talk a little bit around the work that's done in relation to that. Prioritising, concentrate. This is advice and guidance we get from People Insight. Don't have too many actions. Try to keep your actions concise and try to prioritise and really focus on them. Planning, what are we going to do then to make the changes happen that we've identified? Act on what we've committed to and sustain the momentum. So keep it in, keep everything going in order to complete our next survey. Okay, so these are the actions that were presented to the authority in June 23. Action 1 is around the staff survey outcomes, dissemination and further exploration. Action 2 was looking at staff engagement strategy and a communication plan. Action 3, organisational learning and sharing good practice. And Action 4, recognition and reward. And Action 5, learning and development. Okay, so I'll just talk through some of the actions to date. So I'll go through the action and what we've done so far. And I'll also mention things that are looking to happen as well. So we're not there with everything because there's still some work in progress. Okay, so the first one was dissemination and further exploration. Staff survey results have been disseminated to staff. So what happened? We got all the results together. We gave the results to the members of the SLT. We asked SLT directors to cascade that information down to staff, so that each department had their results as well, so that the managers could talk to staff, dig a little bit deeper, try and get an understanding of maybe some of the responses that we've had back. Taking on board the fact of collaboration and making sure that we speak and we listen to members of the staff and we get further feedback. We've actually introduced pulse surveys, which is very, very different to the staff survey. A pulse survey is just a very small amount of questions that will last a couple of minutes. We've done 2 surveys. We've had a pulse survey around our staff networks, and we've also, in the pipeline, the next one to come out is a pulse survey around the fire and rescue service, interaction with our staff, and a bit of awareness as well. So that one,
just on that, it's actually the authority.
oh, sorry, the
Yeah.
authority. Sorry.
It's yourself.
Sorry, yeah, on yourselves. So that will be the next one that will come out. We're going to do some research into negative scores, or we have. So anything that scored 20% or under, we're doing a little research, asking managers to find out. So that. We've introduced, or we have got a number of staff networks. So they're like the voice of our staff, really. So we have done quite a bit of work as well with the networks around ensuring that people know the results and listening to the feedback that they give us of how we can try to rectify or improve on our results. Increased promotion of the 2024 survey to improve participation. So we did struggle a little bit in 2022 with everything that was going on. We're going to do the same again this year in order to try to increase, promote it more on social networks and everything, but also speak to our staff. Last year, we offered an incentive. So for every application that was completed, every survey that was completed, the Chief Fire Officer donated to the firefighter charity. So we may do that again, or we'll put it to our staff to see, is there another incentive or another thing that we can do to try to encourage the rate. Work-life balance responses. So there were a few responses around work-life balance. Some people felt that we could make some improvements. So this is some work that we've already completed. So we have introduced hybrid, apologies for flexible, we've introduced hybrid working, we've amended the flexi time system, and we now have agile working as well. We've got 4 different duty systems, and we've got family-friendly working. This sort of affects as well the health and well-being, so that was one of the other actions. So having this work-life balance can actually affect people's health and well-being as well. So it's another improvement that we've done. We've listened to the staff and we've done another improvement there. We've also as well, when we look at the staff survey, the HMI inspection in 2023, the inspectors have actually fed back to us that staff have spoken positively now about their health and well-being as well. So that's sort of like we've hit that, that's a good result from the survey to our inspection. Action number 2, that was all around strategy and communication. So what we're doing there, we have broadened engagement, as I mentioned before, with networks. That's going right from staff networks, speaking to the members of the networks, PO talks, principal officers going out on station and talking to crews and talking to people here at headquarters, as well as the rep bodies. So when I think of, I've been involved in consultation for the CRMP at first for me, and I've been involved, and I know Deb has engaged, haven't we, with representative bodies.
Yeah, so I can just come in there, Chair. So yeah, we've always engaged with rep bodies in terms of the community risk management plan, and what is different this time is it's more engagement with the networks, they're more mature and there's more of them, and the PO talks as well, we've organically grown over that period. So I feel, having been involved with CRMP for a very long time, that we've probably spoke to people more than we've ever done before about that. It'd be interesting to see whether people feel more connected when they complete the staff survey this year because of all that work that's being done.
Okay, and there is a draft communication engagement strategy that's being produced. We've drawn on the best practice from the sector and from central government. So that's going to be sort of, ensuring that members of SLT and managers engage, cascade all the information down, give staff more involvement with changes that are coming around as well. So it's all around communication and engagement, and the strategy will also support delivery against the Communication and Engagement National Fire Standard. Okay, action 3. For action 3, 4 and 5, I know that you are aware of the draft people plan, so that there is some work there, but this just covers some of the work that's already being completed. So alongside the draft plan, we've also done some work as well. So in relation to organisation learning and shared good practice, and there is a development of cultural action plan and associated cultural dashboard to support organisational learning with key metrics. And there's a revised approach being introduced to 2024 on the appointment process, and that was following feedback from 2023. So, and I know Nick and Mike are here from POD, but that's following feedback from the 2023 process has been incorporated into the revised process. Corporate assurance. Corporate insurance is an area of work that Craig is dealing with.
Well, corporate assurance is something that it sits within my department. And what we started with was taking an HMI process and looking at an incident, for example, from the position of everyone who was involved in that incident. So not just the people who responded to it, perhaps somebody who might have gone out and done a fire safety check before the incident or a protection visit. What training have the staff had? Have they got there in time, good time in line with our performance indicators? So looking at that whole approach to what can we learn from this incident? How can we do things better next time? So that's reasonably well established. We've been trying to do a couple of those every year. We'll have done for a few years. Now we're trying to move into other areas. So for example, in protection, they're looking at an outcome of a protection case, and whether it's enforcement of prohibition or prosecution, looking at everything that surrounds that. Could things be done differently, or might we have moved more towards some type of enforcement measure when we didn't, or vice versa? So through protection and onwards to other departments, we're hoping to try and gather some of that organisational learning. Organisationally, we're really, really good at operational learning, and there's lessons that are learned from the fireground are absolutely shared, and policies have changed and processes have changed. So this is trying to spread out that good practice into the rest of the organisation and have a consistent approach to that. Linked to that is the final bullet point about organisational learning project for the NFCC. So they are doing some work to try and look at ways in which organisational learning can be gathered together nationally, and we would want to adopt the best practice that NFCC are producing at the point in time that project is finished.
Okay, thanks, Deb. Action 4 was around recognition and reward. So we have revised the reward and recognition policies, and they're being developed to publicise the range of benefits that we provide to employees. We're also building on existing approaches to recognition and improving both formal and informal recognition approaches. Action 5, learning and development. So we do have a new learning management system, the LMS, being introduced. That's going to cover things like staff appraisals, training management, operational competency, and e-learning. So again, it's listening to the staff, and that's been built into that process. Okay, and also in relation to career progression and opportunities, which again was one of the things that came back as to develop and improve the knowledge and access to opportunities. We have successfully introduced 2 development grade 12 managerial roles. That's as part of a trial. So that's for non-operational staff. We again listen to staff saying there was not as many opportunities to develop and maybe progress within your career. So that's been introduced. Part of the trial in protection and prevention to provide Green Book staff for that additional career development. Okay, Deb and I will take any questions, but you're coming towards the end now. The next staff survey will take place this year throughout November and December, and work is going to take place in the summer to consider the question sets and prepare communications. Okay, so that's the end of the update for you. If you've got any questions at all for Deb, all right?
I wondered, Chair, whether I could just clarify something that I realised Michelle and I didn't actually include in the presentation, because I think sometimes you just know too much, don't you? And as Michelle was talking about the engagement score there, I realised that we probably haven't described sort of what that engagement score is. So basically, it's made up of a number of questions from the whole question set. The answers to those questions are a really good indicator of a member of staff's engagement with the organisation. So it's a variety of questions, and depending on how they answer, and it's things like, would you recommend Roadside Fire and Rescue Service as a place to work to friends and family, that type of thing, and other things as well. So that's what the engagement score is. It's that broad sort of approach to the way in which staff answer certain questions. So sorry about that, but I realise I was watching Michelle doing it and we haven't told you what that is, so apologies.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Any questions? Yes.
Just in terms of staff members taking up the survey, on what platform do they tend to use? Is it through a laptop, their phone? How is it accessed?
This last time, it was available through phone and laptop. Previously, all the others have just been the laptop. And I think it's probably important to say something about the take-up as well, because that was very low. We were disappointed, and there are reasons, and we do think it will be different this time. But we do try really hard to get across to staff that the reason why we use people in site is that they are independent. They'd never get any work anywhere if they gave away the secrets of who was saying what. No one sees the details of those scores, and no one can identify anyone, perhaps is the way that I should describe it. The only people who ever see anything that might identify somebody are Michelle and myself, and that's where someone has identified themselves in a comment. It's said something where I think, well, I know who you are. I think we need to delete that, or someone else might know who you are. So I think people sort of think, oh, you know, she's going to know what I've said. That is never the case, but I still think we've got some work to do to persuade people of that. But I do think last time was quite unique, but it is a bit more flexible than it used to be in relation to how people complete it.
With regards just a little extra as well, confidentiality, and we did get some feedback around staff being afraid to put the true feelings down, and we've actually had a video put together around confidentiality and just basically explaining what Deb has said. So we'll launch that as well with the ahead of the survey going on, just to try to reassure staff.
Are you saying that we haven't done that before? Is that a new thing? That-
It was the last year.
I think we did do it
we
last
did
time, Chair.
survey.
I think when you look at the response rates, the non-uniform response rates remain high. It was the uniform response rates that affected the overall response rate. So I'm not sure that sort of lack of confidence in the process was the biggest issue last time. I do think the dispute had a lot to do with it. But there's still, you know, odd people who I think just, I suppose, don't know where that information's going, even though we try to tell them. So we've just got to try and give people confidence. So we'll see if we'll obviously use that video again, but see if we can use anything else as well.
I just want to ask, I mean, see, it's November through to December. I was just curious what the actual timescale window was, whether or not reminders are given to
Yes.
fill it out. So I assume yes. But also in terms of being that November, December window as to why that was selected as that time point to do it.
Excellent question, and I can understand why you'd ask that. So originally, the first 3 staff surveys were carried out in spring, summer, but then we had COVID in 2020, so we couldn't do it then, but we still wanted to do it that year. So we slotted it in at the end of the year. So then when the next one came around in 2022, we felt like we needed to maintain that 2-year gap, so we ended up back in November, December. I don't think it makes a lot of difference, but certainly we can keep an eye on that. If this year is a more normal year, and we still don't get particularly good take-up, then perhaps we need to look at it again. But in relation to the question about reminders, people inside have an automated system, so they have everybody's emails, everybody gets an invitation to complete the survey that only they can complete. So everyone has an invitation, you can only do it once, for example, which is different to something like the HMI survey, where anyone could go in 20 times and do it if they have either loved us a lot or didn't like us a lot. So we have quite a lot of checks and balances in it, and quite a lot of reminders for people as well.
And the window that it's open for.
Oh, sorry, I think 5 or 6 weeks. 6 weeks, yeah. And we can extend that if we think we're not getting a lot of people. I think we probably did extend it a little bit last time.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, Dave.
Thanks, Michelle. Obviously, the work that we do here is absolutely fantastic. You know, the amount of resources that we put in to ensure that we engage with all our staff, I think is brilliant. You know, I think it's one of those I think we should shout from the rooftops about it, because I know you mentioned about the National Fire Chiefs Council, that they're doing, and I think that they can learn from us. You know, for what we've established since like 2012, and what we've built on the experience and the knowledge that's we've improved things every year. I think it's, you know, it's a sort of, it's a blueprint, isn't it? It's something that you can pass on to the rest of your thoughts about any open sector way. Then to start doing the engagement that we undertake. When we set this up back in 2012, and the insight came in, it was always that concern, what's it, because things went good at that stage in the service history. And we didn't expect a good response. And it was difficult to read when we had that report. And we knew that changes had to be taken place, so it had to happen. The status quo wasn't an option. And I think since that time, it's grown. The last one, the response wasn't good, but there's reasons for that. And let's hope that, I'm sure, that the one this year will be, you know, a lot more better than that. But just to say that when we started in 2012, and then we had the one in 2014, Insight actually said to us that was the biggest increase in response that they've seen in the public service. And they were quite amazed themselves that turnaround, just on those first 2 years, the improvement that we made was incredible. And since then, it's just gone and grown. And that's when we first established going out and doing the station visits and having the staff engagement days. And again, when we've gone out to the fire stations, spoke to the firefighters like when we were in Old Swan. I think the longest serving officer there, firefighter, was for 26 years. And he'd never seen a council. I remember when we done that back in 2012. People had worked for the service 28, 30 years. It was the first time that an elected member had actually gone out to the fire station and spoken to them, which I thought was, I felt a bit embarrassed actually at the time. But when we had that conversation with them and opened it up with them, I think it was refreshing for us because obviously we see and we get challenged from another angle. But one of the things that I did when we set it up is that when we spoke to firefighters, we wouldn't have any senior officer in the room to enable them to talk to us in confidence. So they could say whatever we wish, ask us whatever we wish. We didn't get the answer. We didn't know the answer, we get the answer for them. But I think we've crept into a position now where the station manager or somebody else may be sitting in the room. And I think if we didn't have that, I think that relationship with the firefighters and that issue of the confidence within us and their abilities to speak openly, I think we should have a conversation about that. We should reintroduce that really because we can't allow that to what's being built to break down. And I think that's one of the issues. We need to make sure that we build on it rather than reducing the effect of how we deal with all our staff. And the other one with the staff engagement days, the last one, we had quite a number of teams, we were rotating around, and it went so quickly because I suppose when staff go into something, they have to head to hard, what's this, so I was just thinking I'd rather be doing something else. So for them, it's probably it's a bit difficult, but I think we were all reassured that we are all human, we were the same as them, we haven't got any special things that go on in our life. Their problems are the same as our problems that we have to face. And I think once we started speaking to them and they were more relaxed, they opened up a lot more, which was good. But I wonder how we can target this then, the data that we receive and the issues that are fed back to us, whether these future staff engagement days can be tailored around those issues. So we can draw down a bit more to what their feelings are and what their approach is and what they think we should do and what we should consider. So I think that might help as well as we go forward and build on a fantastic base. And that's when people love working for the fire and rescue service because you don't get this in the local council. The way I do, I don't get this in my job. But it goes to show, doesn't it? And it's all about how you value your staff. And I think if we build on this and learn from it, we can't fail, can we? And that's why people don't want to leave this organisation and that's why we're the best organisation in the country, as I always say. But for me, it's fantastic what you do. Thank you very much for all your work because I know how much you put into it. And for us, for our part as the elected members, I think use us more, maybe, and get us to do some of the work or ask some of the difficult questions that maybe people might feel a bit uncomfortable because I'm always one. I think that we always should be challenged. When people say, do you give a service 10 out of 10? Well, no, because there's always things that can improve because things change. So I think that's my thoughts about us going forward. But that's fantastic. Keep going.
Thanks very much. Chair, is it all right if I just respond on a couple of things? Michelle mentioned about the pulse survey about the authority members, and you may be thinking, good Lord, what are we asking about? And it is some of that stuff. It is to try and maybe drill down a little bit into how much staff feel that they engage with the authority or how much they know about the authority, which I think will inform your future visits and your future engagement. And in relation to sort of this being an example of good practice, I think it is. I mean, clearly there are other services using People Insight and there are other services using other providers and doing their own surveys. But without having the stats to hand, I think it's unlikely there are many services that have gone on doing it for as long as we have, as regularly as we have. Certainly in my experience, people sort of do surveys for a while and then it drops off, or it's too difficult to do it, as you mentioned at the beginning, council handwriting. So I think it's hugely valuable to continue doing this every couple of years. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Chair. So just want to echo what Councillor Anratty said there. I've only been on the authority 10 months or so, and I've just found it a breeze, to be honest. But part of that is because you're so enabled to ask questions, and if you have I was door knocking in my ward on Friday, and a firefighter, I spoke to him. I actually knocked on his door, and he knew that was on the authority, so we had a good chat. Just a question really about I know it seems the results can be skewed by international events sometimes, or in this case from 2022 around the disputes. Is there any way we could overcome that in some way? I'm wondering if there's some way we can gauge levels on the go almost. I'm just thinking, not this specifically, but sometimes you're in a train station or a shop and you get the opportunity to click one of those terminals to say how happy you are, how your experience was, just so we can get some kind of almost a live feed of how staff are feeling, so that we're not waiting every 2 years for a big set of results. So I'm not saying we don't do that as well, but just some kind of way we can, or maybe we're already doing it.
No, I mean, we're not doing that, but it's well worth considering, and it's certainly something that could be done with pulse surveys. So at the moment, the pulse surveys that we've done or we've developed have been more thematic in that sense, but there could equally be more sort of instant satisfaction surveys. One thing that I didn't say was that for the last survey, we were so aware of the national dispute, and there were local issues as well, and the cost of living crisis and the war in Ukraine. There were a lot of things going on. We did ask some specific questions, which weren't scored, didn't become part of the results, about how those things were affecting staff and how those things were affecting the way staff answered the questions. I don't have the answers with me right now, but I could certainly get that information. All the staff survey results are on the website, so anyone can see them right back to 2014. But I'm not expecting to go and analyse them all. We can certainly have a look if that's something that would be of interest. It probably wasn't as big an impact as we thought it might be, but it was interesting to ask the question.
Okay. Any other question? Can I thank you both for that report? Excellent.
Thank you.
Okay, the recommendation, sure there is a recommendation, but it's recommended that members note and scrutinise the content of the presentation as part of a broader discussion about the 2022 tax survey. Is that agreed? Agreed. So we're going to agenda item 6, which is item 5 in our main papers, and that's the employee work-life balance. And it's gonna.
Nikki, okay?
Just pass it back to me. Which one? That way to go, not back. Yeah, okay.
If not, it's not.
No problem. Good afternoon, everyone. Normally we have a title slide, but I think I'm a regular visitor to this committee, so it says hi to me again. Apologies in some ways if you've heard me speak before. But for those that you don't know me, if you haven't, I'm Nick Murnock, I'm Director of People and Organisational Development. What I was asked to sort of give you an overview today was around the hybrid working. Really just to walk through what we did and what we've done as far as our review of the first 12 months. So our journey started about 18 months ago. We've gone through COVID like a lot of us had. We've looked and adapted our ways of working with our staff. Some enforced, some by agreements, some sort of quite different ways that raised a lot of questions with our staff around, well, okay, as organisations across the country were coming back into the workplace or not, as the case was, where were we going to go as an organisation? So we thought, well, okay, the best way to do it is to speak to the staff themselves. So myself and the chief ran 2 consultation meetings. We got about 90 odd people, mix of non-uniform and uniform staff, and really didn't try and lead the meetings. It was really quite an open, well, okay, what have you seen out there? What have your friends doing when they're in work? What do you think might work in here? And had really quite an open debate around what our staff felt was the best way to move forward out of COVID. The areas that we were sort of were proposing and throwing up to have a little conversation was obviously around home working. Again, you'll all be aware once we fell out of COVID, a lot of organisations went quite heavily into home working. They'd been there and they weren't bringing people back. There was some other thoughts and questions around, well, which way do you go? So we threw it out to the staff, well, okay, what is it? Mix of 100%, couple of days a week. Do we have a set day so that everyone comes and sees each other? Because a lot of that sort of heart of the organisation debate comes into home working as well. If you're all constantly home working, do you lose that interaction, that contact just with your colleagues? The water cooler, the cup of coffee conversations, does that disappear? So home working was there. The compressed working week was one. A lot of organisations were looking at the 4-day working. They were looking at different ways, with maybe sort of putting the 5 days into 4 days. So we thought, well, what do you think about that? Have a think, got some views around that. There was a lot of very quick hesitancy over the 4 days. People felt that whilst the principle of working 4 days and being paid for 5 was quite enticing, the issue of, well, my work is still going to be there. I can't do it in 4 days. A lot of people felt, well, yeah, certain jobs, without being rude, at a lower transactional level could probably be done with 4 days. But if you're a manager, the likelihood is you're going to get a call on your day off, and it's your 5th day anyway. And so there was a lot of sort of hesitancy, and I'm sure you're aware from your own organisations. Subsequently, that's been, I think, nationally a view. 4 days has worked in certain industries. One's for me predominantly where they can actually completely shut down for a day, and that allows that clear differentiation between 4 and 5 days. Other organisations have found it difficulty, and there has been some issues around mental health with that, but we can move through that a little bit later. And the other area we decided to look at was revising the flexi time system. That had most of the discussions, and a lot of people had views. They liked the flexi time system, but it was really a case of it didn't quite fit what people wanted it to do, and the utilisation of it had scope to do more, and we agreed with that. We felt there really was some good wins within a revision of the flexi time system and using it in a mature and a trusting of our employees way. So that gave quite a heavy debate, particularly around the ability, because members will be aware, normally flexi time, you clock yourself in, you clock out for your lunch, and you clock yourself and you go home. And the questions quite rightly were, well, can we be a bit more flexible around that? If we're going to look at longer working days, different ways of working, which is hybrid, which COVID have brought about. People have been sort of working from home. They get on at 8 o'clock in the morning, 7:30, and maybe finish earlier. Some people like to sort of work later into the evening and have a later start. So the ability to potentially mirror that in a more formal flexi system seemed quite eminently sensible. People felt it would assist their caring abilities, the ability to sort of log off in sort of 3 o'clock, if you like. So a lot of our sort of, from a family perspective, people were struggling with childcare costs, and more so with COVID, it brought more challenges around that way. So why or not could people go, well, okay, I'll come in, I still have my lunch, I'll just clock off at 3, I'll go and pick the kids up rather than take them to an after school or whatever else, drop them with somebody, or if they're comfortable, put them back at home, and then I can start working again afterwards. And the more we explored that, it was, yeah, that makes sense. And as we go through it, you'll see that was probably one of the biggest successes with this. A number of other issues were raised up, all good questions. Could people work weekends? Some people do at the moment, but it's more done on overtime. Formalisation of weekends, a little bit of issue with trade unions, actually. I understand it. The view was, well, if you start making it a 7-day process, then that premium rate overtime debate would be taken into a different direction. So slight little bit of hesitancy to some degree. And that one really is still one that's in the ether. There was always concern around hybrid was going to be limited to people. Well, it was. You'll see in a minute, the next slide, we had to put some stipulations to ensure that there was still an organisational need that justified the utilisation of hybrid. And And obviously our operational staff, it just wasn't an option because you can't really take the fire engine home and then all put it down and all those kind of things. Although it was asked. The ability for part-time staff to receive the same opportunities, yeah, goes without saying. We did that one. Trial or permanent, it's still an ongoing trial, but it's got a much more permanency. The staff know where they are with it. You as members had already approved what we used as agile working, so that was an opportunity just for people. You know, if I have a report to write, rather than come in and do it, and 4 or 5 people want to see me during the course of the day, and just let myself away at home and write it and get it done in a day, that's still there. So people can still have sporadic agile working to do short-term deadlines, pieces of work without having to apply for hybrid working. So that stayed in place as well. You have to just mention before about the soul of the organisation. It was quite heartening that people felt, well, actually, I'm not sure I want to do 100% at home. A lot of people just didn't want to do it. They like coming into work. They like that interaction. And that's fine, because the more mature we are, the more you can have different matches for different individuals. And that's where we probably ended up. Would it be applied consistently by all line managers? Nobody named any names. Nobody, safe to say, nobody's he's not about in the office. But there was some concerns. And there has been a little hesitancy that's had to be smoothed through. That's fine as well. It's a learning for managers as much as it is for the individuals utilising hybrid. So the trial that we put into place was home station working. So we offered the opportunity for people either to work at home or work on a fire station if that was close to the home. So if they didn't want to actually work at home but not come all the way over to Bridle Road, so saving travel costs, economically, more green process, it made sense. So we put that into place. We did put a set of criteria, which you can see there, and it's on your slide, so I maybe won't rattle through all of it for you. You can see that yourself, but there clearly needed to be some measurement around the productive element of it. My line managers are visible, departmental meetings still took place, and so your core business still took place and wasn't impeded by the utilisation of hybrid working. So that was what we asked our managers to have a little look at. And then they were given options of, as in some cases, hybrid working is not appropriate for your role. And there's not a lot of those. Obviously, the operational side of having that. Unfortunately, with the reception area, that's a job that we need to have people on the reception. So there's 1 or 2 jobs that we maybe, if you're further down the line, consider other ways of doing it. Not trying to restructure Debbie's department, but we could have an automated reception but those are things further down the line. The majority of people have entered into some kind of hybrid, but the option is there. Is it as appropriate for your role? Is it full or part-time? Do you want to just work at the station, as we said? Mobile working, so our inspection staff, they basically can go out, do their inspections and just drop into whatever fire station they need to either do their admin or download their documents. So they can basically just have a mobile opportunity, not any particular fixed base, but they're aware. All of this is underpinned by the fact that people are registering when they're at home, what they're doing. So people are diarising so that line managers have an idea of where their employees are, when they're available, when they're not. So it is well sort of controlled. The flexi working arrangements that we discussed, we basically extended the flexi time so that people could work between 7 and 9 o'clock at night. Personal choices. Again, still some safe elements. If people are working in the office here, there's a lone worker issue that we've had to address so that people aren't left on their own. But the majority of the later working is people, as I've just described, who may take the opportunity to utilise the afternoon log off to go and do some kind of childcare or parental care and then log back on and do most of that work at home. So it's got a longer band for people to work within, and that's proved quite successful. There was still a need, we felt, for some kind of departmental core hours. We are a public service, we are public facing, there are still phone calls. We have given people mobile phones so that they can push their desktop phone onto a mobile and take it home, but there are still some times where managers have still wanted that interaction. So whilst it's skeleton, there is still a presence within the office between 9 and 5. FlexiTime has core hours, so that you have to do X period, so you have to be visible between sort of 10 and 3 o'clock. And there was a debate over whether we get rid of that because we were extending it. But again, the chief's view was from a continuity purpose. He still wanted some element of understanding that the staff were available within a core period where we get most of our phone calls and such. So that stayed in place. The ability to log on and log back off multiple times has been quite a success. And the ability now for people, if they are going to work longer hours, because the ability again of doing the flexi is if there's a real high profile piece of work that needs doing, or for example, finance have a year end, they've got so much work between that sort of February and April period, then they can cram to get that work done and just accrue a little bit more flexi than normal. So they don't lose the time. They're happy to react to particular pieces of work at peak times, and everybody is content that there's no loss and there's no sort of overextending this discretionary work ethic that other organisations can milk if they're so choosing to do. Yeah, agile working stays in place, as I said, and as Michelle alluded to there, we've always had, through yourselves, as ratifying them strong family-friendly arrangements in place for more longer-term contractual change. They still stay in place. Hybrid as a supplement, not a replacement. So we put it into place for 12 months, and then we put out a survey, basically one survey to managers and one survey to our employees who undertake it, to say, well, how's it for you? What have you seen? What do you like? What you don't like? Again, quite an open, transparent, fair bit of free text to try and get people into telling us what they've done and how they found it. A lot of positive. Make it permanent is one. We decided ultimately in the end we'd go for another 12 months on top and then have another review. If the feeling is still as positive, then from my own personal perspective, and they will probably, I think they'll extend it permanently, but that is still a choice. So at the moment, it's still temporary. It certainly has worked in relation to work-life balance. It reduces travel costs. It's helped in those particular ways. We've struggled as an organisation. You, as employers, the cost of living crisis has hit hard for an awful lot of people. And whichever way that we can try and get into and make some kinds of changes, be it small or not, then it helps. And this certainly, the feedback we got is it helps. Releases more productive work time. And a lot of people have said, well, I'm not spending 2.5 hours traveling either way as I'm actually working. So it works better for me. You get more time out of me. So the productive work time has worked. People felt it can remove distractions. It does. I can vouch for that sometimes, the ability just to lock yourself away and get a lot done, as we all know. I'm sure teaching to suck eggs there. Less worry over the childcare with the flexi system. That was a lot of it. We have, a lot of our employees have that childcare responsibility, and the cost of it is it's quite ridiculous at times for after school, breakfast clubs, whatever else. The extended flexi and the ability to work in and out of that flexi system has made a difference for people in reducing an awful lot of those costs. The agile working is still there, as we said. People just like to do the odd day at home. That's fine as well. There was some complaints, which is fine, because at the end of the day, it was always going to have teething problems. Clearer set of rules over what constitutes a half day worked and what constitutes a total hours worked during the day. Those have been reproduced and they'll be out for circulation fairly soon. A few people said they felt it was a bit out of sight, out of mind with some of their colleagues. I've subsequently had conversations with a number of managers. They don't share that concern, but it's one to note. It's around, we've just discussed, some staff like to see a physical presence, some it doesn't bother them. I think if you're doing that sort of skeleton role and you maybe get a few phone calls one after another, you might feel, is it just me that's answering the calls? But I think the reality is somewhere slightly different away from that. So I think it's noted, but I'm not sure it's a major concern to us. We've talked about diverse in work phones. Some do, some didn't. So most people do now, or they're given if they're not prepared to use or their own mobile phone and put the work phone onto that. That makes sense. Then we'll give them a separate mobile phone to do that. Somebody said, should people on probation get access to hybrid? I've left it down to the line manager, if I'm honest with you. I think, at the end of the day, whether you're on probation or not, you're still an employee. So you shouldn't affect the way that you work. For me personally, if managers feel that the best way of teaching an individual in the first 6 months, which is their probation period, is at the office, then they justify it. That's fine also. As long as the debate has been had and people understand both ways, that's fine with me. Some people didn't agree with the amount of flexi that could be accrued because it's gone from 2 days to 3 days. It's an opinion. Again, line managers are content. Line managers are more than happy with the way that it's rolling out. So we've listened to it. I'm not sure it's an issue that I want to make any change to. And a few people said, I've asked and I've never been spoken to by my line manager. They were resolved privately as well. Further issues that people wanted to consider during winter time, could the balance of days in the office and days at home be changed? I think it's quite a valid point. You know, we've had a pretty torrid winter, haven't we? And we've had if you get a good fall of snow and the roads are a bit icy, then where people at the moment do 3 days in the office, 2 days at home, could we tweak that round, or could we go, tell you what, for those particular days, if you feel it's appropriate work at home? Yeah, we probably could. But I think that could probably be done with Agile. I'm not sure we need to fundamentally make too many changes, but it was a useful point of view. We talked about reduction of core hours. We're fairly comfortable where we are with that. Remove the need for office cover. At the moment, Chief Officer prefers to have some form of office cover, so that's what we're sticking with. Allow home hybrid working. Yeah, that's already in place with the extension of the flexi system as well. The ability to accumulate more flexi and bigger carryover, no. We think 3 days accumulation is enough. And the carryovers, I think once people start building up too many hours, it begins to worry me that they're not taking the rests, the breaks, the holidays, all those things that could ultimately affect their health further down the line. I think we have a nice balance. If there's a sudden need for a particular department to do a particular piece of work within a small time frame, that's what overtime's there for, and we utilise it that way. So I think the balance is still fairly comfortable and fairly right from where I am. Work hours over the weekends, we have allowed the odd person to do that. As I say, the permanency of that is a little bit more of a debate and something that further continues with the trade unions, but some people have worked weekends with agreement with their managers and agreement with themselves that it just becomes hour for hour. Then we've allowed that. We've been fairly pragmatic with it. Create more space in fire stations. A lot of staff have chosen to not work at home, but not come all the way here into Bridle Road. So certain fire stations have become premium. There's conversations happening with the states as to whether we can find a little bit more space there. It's not a major issue, but it probably could help 2, 3, 4 other members of staff. So we'll continue to look at that space because it does need the ability to plug your laptop in, lights, chairs, desks, all those kind of things. So we'll have another little look at that. Give extra leave for 100% attendance. I think that's probably slightly reward and benefit rather than flexi time. If you recall, those of you who've been on this authority for a long, long time, we did used to do incentives. Yeah. Sorry, Linda, I really wasn't looking at you. I was trying to look all around. But we have done it before. We used to, for people at 100% attendance, we used to give an extra day. But ultimately, the cost of that became a little restrictive. That's not to say we may not review that, but that's probably a conversation for another day, members, I think. Just to finish off, so these are actually direct quotes from people within the survey when we asked them to say anything else. I save £20 a week on childcare costs, split my hours on a Tuesday, I'm able to take my children to clubs, assists with my work-life balance, enables me to remain in full-time work. It also means that my children don't have to go to after-school club every day, as the 3 days they're in the club. They are at school from 8:20, 17:50, which is a long day. So really a good endorsement. There's somebody with a bit of a medical issue and feels that the changes and the opportunities to work in a different way assists them, frees time up, assists with family time. There's an awful lot of positives to come out of it. Number one, I can focus on tax away from the office distractions. No travel means I can work earlier and finish later. So it really has come across as quite the feedback after how was it for you for the first 12 months has been really positive. I think for us as managers, it works well. The engagement with the staff has been good. So there are an awful lot of things that mean I suggest we continue to work forward with this. We will continue to monitor it. And the other good thing is, and those of you that were joining us for the sickness scrutiny the other month, our short-term sickness has gone down, and a lot of that is down to, you know, there have been days where people have been forced to take a day on the sick because other things have got in the way. You can't get away from that. It's a fact of life. those have now been reduced because there's no need to take that day because you can clock off and do what you need to do. So it's helped the short-term sickness, there's no doubt, and we've seen about nearly a percent, Mike, over a period of time. Yeah, about 1% has fallen off Green Book sickness. So it's very beneficial that way around. Contributed to recruitment and retention. We've had, certainly 18 months ago, we lost 2 good employees in 2 different departments, or potential employees, because he said, have you got homework? And at the time we didn't. And the salary wasn't an issue, it was the homework and that was an issue to individuals. So it's made an issue now is that, yes, we can offer that. We've become more competitive and some of our recruitment has been beneficial on the back of that. As I say, genuinely it is just popular. And I think credit where credit's due. The real push for this after COVID came after a number of staff raised it through your member staff engagement days. It came through yourselves, through Les Byron's and they. So I think it shows that that whole circle of life between us all has got us into a good place. So slight whistle stop tour through hybrid. Happy to take any questions.
Sure. That's very interesting. Just wonder, what is the carryover? Is that from month to month or from year to year or both?
Month to month.
And what is that? How many days?
It's 3 days.
Oh, right, okay. Thank you.
Okay. I mean, we do ask managers, so just to depend, but they do keep an eye on the people on sort of accruing too much too often, and there's a regularity in need, purely from a health and safety perspective, because of what people are doing that many hours, do we need to look at the role that they do.
Another question I forgot to ask.
Yeah, of course.
Has FlexiTime reduced the amount of overtime?
Certainly for Green Book staff, it's overtime wasn't a major issue. I think, if I'm honest with you, overtime within the operational side, because it's a needs must system, so we have to do it. A lot of the time with Green Book, with a good managerial approach, we can revamp the way that people operate and such. So it probably wasn't a major challenge. What it does do is that, as I say, you know, and I'm totally comfortable with it. Conversations with unions, and they're a bit concerned because within the Green Book terms and conditions, Saturday, Sunday working is double time and a half and double time, and they didn't want to forgo that, but they also empathise with the element of, well, if somebody wanted to do a Saturday morning and have a Thursday afternoon off, they weren't going to get in the way of it. So we have to sort of quasi don't quite look that way, and it works quite nicely. But so we can get around a number of ways. So I don't think it directly impacts on overtime, because Green Book overtime was never really an issue for us.
Thank you.
Okay.
Did anybody complain about cost of fuel? Keeping warm, whatever. I mean, it should be offset if we're looking at it.
Yeah, it did, and I mean, to be honest, people weren't. I think I think a lot of people were happy that sort of it was more of a slight quid pro quo, if you like. I mean, I think you're right. For some organisations, because I know a friend of mine works permanently home and has done for 4 years now, and they do pay an allowance because they've sold the building in town and made a fortune out. So I think from that perspective, I think there's the ability for them to do it because it's organisationally benefit to large companies. For us, I think if we started making those allowances, I think it would probably end up with more of a cost, if you like. So it's a fair comment.
No,
we don't. Yeah. Yeah. No,
it's just a question we have in very long time now, giving some sort of compensation.
Yeah.
Check if that's still good.
No, I think obviously that during the COVID time there was tax relief that people could claim, wasn't there? And that was still there, and we did sort of put a sheet out to help people if they wanted to make that claim, but it had to be done through themselves. But I think the broader debate of providing tables, chairs, and heating and lighting costs impacted on people's tax as well. From our perspective, you'd end up probably with a slight benefit in kind argument somewhere further down the line. So if I'm being very honest with you, we've sort of kept away from that, and there's not really been complaints. I think people are quite content with quick progress.
How many people didn't want it, didn't want to work from home?
Yeah, because there are other people. Just Jill, do you want to go first?
Yeah, it was a comment more than a question. Thank you for the presentation.
No problem.
Because you've come across in an enthusiastic way. So I'm sort of picking up that that's the way the organisation feels about it.
Yeah.
But what it also puts there is this level of trust within the workforce, and then that has a positive impact as well, because if you feel trusted and engaged, it's very grown up, it's very mature, and it just seems extremely positive. So if that's the way you're presenting it, is that's the way it is, it just seems like, you know, a good aspect of work that's being done in the exploration of hybrid working, and it seems like it's a real positive to the organisation. So therefore, it's more of a comment.
No, but thank you, and it's a very valid comment, because I think, you know, I'm not gonna stand here and say there were some managers who were a little concerned around how they go about it, and maybe a little bit not quite looking at the whole holistic picture, and an element of starting on a quasi-negative, well, they're just gonna be watching the TV, aren't they? You know, those guys, and very few, very far between, very quickly won over, and like you say, what we've got from the staff and the feedback, because, you know, Michelle was taking, we do lots of surveys in this organisation, the response was really, really high, and it was very positive, so you're right, I do think it's made a real input into our engagement, and it's reflected, yeah. No, thank you.
Okay, Dory?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question. How many people didn't want to work from home? Was it many?
I haven't got the exact figures. I know certainly 1, 2 people in my department didn't want to. They liked to work. Yeah, which is a lot.
You build your relationships up in work, don't you?
Yeah, I
And
think
it's all about relationships and trust.
spot on, and I think, you know, we were talking about that, sort of that water cooler cup of coffee moment where you make your coffee, how did you see the game last night? Those kind of interactions, if you're working or you live at home, it's not the same kind of thing, is it? So I won't mention football. I've got a big smile on, I can tell you my support. But it's one of those, but you know, you're right. There are a few, and that's fine. There was never any pressure for everybody has to go out on the Wednesday or whatever. We left it as open for everybody who could.
Yeah, I think Doreen has a great point. I mean, I noticed that as well. A lot of people who I work with who didn't want to work at home, they wanted to come in and they wanted to have the social interaction.
Yes.
Quite right. Yeah, Linda, did you say you wanted?
Yeah, just, can I say thank you, because all the presentations have been absolutely brilliant today. But it's on the financial implications, and it's making out that most of this finance money was paid during COVID, when everybody had to work from home.
Right.
But there will be a knock-on effect in the future when all that equipment needs replacing.
Yeah.
Something to,
It's something we build in.
something you're budgeting for.
Yeah, sorry, Linda. To be fair, Deb does all the ICT, and her department has a forward plan. So we have like a refresher program for all our ICT, so that we have a lifespan of laptops, and Deb's team has a whole picture of that, so they know each year how many are going to fall out of that life cycle. So we'll build that in, so you know we can have that covered hopefully. Thank you. No problem.
I just wanted to come back on one other thing.
Yeah, no worries.
Has there been any thoughts around it that knowing that this has worked well?
Yeah.
Is that future thinking about equality, diversity, inclusion, would this then support or help employment prospects for those who say have disability and therefore would be included because it would be an offer that's there? It's just whether or not there've been any thoughts around that, you know, inclusion aspect, particularly around disability, because some people with a certain disabilities indeed might find it easier to have that hybrid aspect, whether it's there in totality or in part.
I think you're right, and I think as we grow into this, I think the original outset was around cost of living and recruitment, retention, those first elements of becoming competitive in the market, because we were beginning to lose a lot of our good staff as people came back post-COVID. Salary rates sort of went up in the more the private sector, and we were potentially losing some good people. Yeah. So we've got that leveled out. I think you saw on one of the quotes, there was a lady had tinnitus, I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it. Tinnitus, there you go. It's not because it's the musculoskeletal, I don't know. Come up with a different word, you can't say it's standing meat. But her working at home has helped that particular situation, and I think it is. And I think it also gives our occupational health doctors the facility to go, well, if people do need that, even if it's for a shorter time or to make some kind of reasonable adjustment, it does. So I think we're not probably completely there, but I do agree we need to be utilising it and building on it as we develop. So we're probably 40% where we want to be, but longer term, spot on.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, are there any other questions? Yeah, I think, it's gonna go on for another year then.
I think at least another year, Chair. I mean,
How long have you got left within this year, or we just started it now?
I think we're about 4 or 5 months into it, so I think we've given it 3 or 4 months. I'll probably be coming back to SLT, our senior leadership team, and going from my perspective. I think we go again. I think at some point, and Dave will be influenced with the executive team. I think ultimately we've got this far with it now. I'm not sure why we wouldn't just put it in a more permanent capacity.
Great, once again, great reports, and we look forward to you coming back in a few months.
Yeah. You're gonna be glad to know I'm not due back till September now, so yeah, you have somebody else next time. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the recommendation is that, in notice presentation, provide all suitable feedback appropriate to the hybrid working policy. Agreed?
Agreed.
So we go on to, agenda item 7, which is here. Report.
Thank you, Chair. This report is regarding our scrutiny forward work plan, which you'll all know, obviously we have as Appendix A, which is on page 25 of the agenda. So the scrutiny forward work plan was approved last year by the full authority. I've highlighted in blue those items that have already been before scrutiny. Last year we have 2 more today. So it's just the itinerary of what we propose upcoming, and obviously this is a living document, so if anyone has any other recommendations to add to this, please say.
Okay. Yeah, but once again, scrutiny is in our hands as this committee. It's up to any of us, if we want, if we feel that we need to scrutinise anything, or you feel that you need to scrutinise anything, just come forward, either to me or Leah or wherever. We have the time to take it anyway, but we can always add. You know, there is no problem with that, and it's been working well for the last few years anyway. So please feel free to come forward at any time. They're waiting for us. Okay.
Can I ask, does anybody do any scrutiny? You know, when the firefighters go out, knock on doors and ask them to see the fire alarms and.
Yeah.
Are you getting any complaints there, or is there any scrutiny done there? Because they're not lasting 10 years like they say they are.
Of the actual, smoke alarm fitted. Not that I'm aware of, but I can look into it and see if there's anything. Do you scrutinise it, what's the feedback, to find out?
I'd like to know, because they're definitely not lasting 10 years, and they're sold to us as 10-year batteries.
Okay. Well, Leah's got that now, and we can perhaps put that on.
Yeah.
But I want to know who's scrutinising us, to be quite honest.
The voters.
Okay, so I think that's, there's no more questions on that. I think that draws an end to the meeting tonight. Thank everybody for their attendance. And by the way, elections next month. I don't know if anybody on the committee is up for election, but if they are, good luck.
I don't think anyone is.
Hopefully we'll be back again. Right?
Yeah. Anybody today.